Hey, everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing great. We're going to talk today about the New York Fed survey. It's very important to understand where the household sentiment lies because that is exactly where the consumer believes, hey, the economy's doing good. I'm going to spend my money, or the economy's doing bad. I'm going to save my money. It's very, very important because if the sentiment, the majority of the sentiment starts to turn down, goes negative, then we start to see contraction. Everybody saves money, no money gets spent, velocity of money and transactions come to a grinding halt, and things get bad quick. That's when we run into liquidity crisis. And this is the last thing the banks need. All right. So here we go. Out of Zero Hedge, it's entitled New York Fed Survey finds sharp deterioration in household financial sentiment as long-term inflation seen rising to 15-month highs. Now, I covered just a brief little bit part of this, but I went into more depth about the household sentiment, how they're perceiving inflation on my other channel, Real Estate Ninja. If you want to check it out, that'd be great. I also go into what's going on in Europe because Europe is very important. We need to keep an eye on Europe. That is our bellwether. They're going to crash, and then we have about 6 to 8 weeks until we follow. Okay. All right, here we go. After 4 months, oh, let me stop there too. I put a link at the top line of the description for a premiere that starts today at I want to say 1 or 1:30 p.m. Pacific, with an auto broker that is different than 99% of the auto brokers in the nation. And we're talking about the auto industry and the big changes that have just happened. Everything from loans to insurance, all kinds of stuff. I'd love for you to take a look at it. Click that link and hit the bell icon and watch that as that premiere comes out. All right. Sorry. Okay, here we go. After 4 months of declines in the 1 year inflation expectation, as reported by the New York Fed's consumer survey, August saw a reversal in this series, which traditionally is also a proxy for the price of oil. However, this was offset by a small decline in 3 year inflation expectations. All right. People believe that inflation is here to stay, but they think that it's not going to be as bad 3 years from now. But they also say 5 years from now, I'm jumping ahead, inflation is going to be here to stay. That is normalcy bias. Okay. That is where the public is extremely deceived. They figure anything that happened yesterday or the day before, if it's the same as today, that means it's going to be the same tomorrow and the next day, right? That's that very small blinders on, the horse blinders approach to economics, where if you pull back and you get a really big snapshot of the economy. And how do you do a snapshot of the economy? You take a snapshot of history, what has happened in the past, different cycles. Then you can look in the future. This is why your family and friends say there's not going to be a crash. Not going to be a crash. Remember Janet Yellen in 2017 when she was Federal Reserve Chairman said, we will never see another banking crisis like we did in 2008 in our lifetimes. Well, good news, Janet. You were wrong, and it only took you, 5 years to be wrong. And we're now there. We're experiencing right now a banking collapse that started in the spring. It's still continuing. It's going to hit fever pitch in the next couple months. Well, actually, you're going to really see it in the next month. That's already bigger than all of 2008. So, Janet Yellen, you're wrong. But that's okay. Ben Bernanke was wrong in 2005 when he said, Maria Bartiromo, I do not believe I share your same sentiment that the housing market is in trouble, that housing prices are going to go down because we just fixed the problem with mortgage-backed securities. This is in 2005, mind you. I was watching that in real time and running for the hills in my house. So he was wrong. So all these people are wrong. But are they wrong, or do they know what's really coming next? So let's dive in a little bit more. It says the inflation outlook at the 5 year point hit the highest since March of 2022, while households turn even less optimistic about their financial situation. Let me ask you this. Type 1 if you are optimistic about your financial situation. Type 2 if you are pessimistic about your financial situation. And then type 3 if you believe that regardless if you're pessimistic or optimistic, that you can do something right now to make it better. Honestly, I mean, let me know. Let's do the online poll right now with you guys as you are answering this question. All right. Now, I believe 100% in 3. No matter which way you go, you are in complete control of this. All right. There are outside effects that happen that affect your income, your situation, your stability financially. But ultimately, if you know these things are coming, like I share with you guys online, you can position yourself or pivot to protect yourself and then make a lot of money on the backside. All right, let's see this. The report also noted that median inflation uncertainty was unchanged at the 1 year horizon and decreased at the 3 and 5 year horizons. These are the 1 year time mark. What is the average person thinking inflation is going to be, right? Then what does the average person think inflation is going to be at 3 years and then at 5 years? Okay. Turning to median home price growth expectations. This is important, right? Housing is uh, the bellwether when it comes to the wealth of a nation because the housing wealth effect is the strongest wealth effect a human can have. The survey found that these increased by 0.3% point to 3.1%, its highest reading since July of 2022, which of course is just the opposite of what the Fed wants to achieve. So people actually believe that homes are going to be higher a year from now or 3 years from now than they are today. Now, here's the problem with this. Who's going to pay the people, the workers, more money to be able to buy a more expensive house than what is already here today? The truth is, home prices have stopped, not stalled, stopped. We're going to be going in reverse here pretty shortly. Even if companies said, and we've seen wage increases, right, with full-time jobs, we're not seeing wage increases necessarily with part-time jobs, but companies' margins are shrinking. So what do? As they give you a raise higher, they've got to lay somebody off. Or they've got to stop something in their company to save money because the money's not coming in the door. And as people lose their jobs, that's less people to buy goods and services. So the companies suffer even more than that. So this is what's crazy. I don't care if it's 99% of the population that believes that homes are going to be more expensive in 3 years based off of zero fundamentals. You have to remember 99% of the population also believed the same thing in 2005 when they were rushing into homes, 2004, 2005, getting the negative amortization loans, a ton of adjustable rate mortgages, which I just did a video about that, about how many adjustable rate mortgages are being used right now to buy homes, anywhere from 400,000 to a million and then a million on up. It is staggering. We're at higher levels now of adjustable rate mortgages than we were back during the crisis of 2006. This is amazing. But just remember, 99% of the population believe the same thing back then. And guess what? 99% were wrong. So I want you thinking like the 1%, and I want you being prepared. The way this is going to be different this time is we're all going to be ready to buy up these houses dirt cheap as compared to the amount of people that were prepared the last time. There are very few people prepared for the housing crisis. This time, we're going to get ready for this, and we're going to pounce. So again, the average person thinking homes are going to go up higher, right? And this is, of course, the opposite of what the Fed wants to achieve. They want to crush your expectations. They want you scared and then liquidating homes. And they're going to achieve that. They're going to achieve it in a handful of different ways. They're going to tighten liquidity. They're going to raise rates even higher. And they don't have to necessarily raise rates just by constantly raising the Fed funds rate, okay? There's other different ways that they can cause the 10-year bond to come skyrocketing. And I do believe that is coming. Oh, and then think about this. As the 10-year bond increases or other bonds increase, look at the value, the actual face value or how it loses value if somebody wants to sell any bonds that they took out just a month ago, 2 months ago, a year ago. That's another thing. We're seeing banks take losses, and we're going to be seeing individual investors that are running to safe havens take large losses unless they hold those to maturity. And the thing is a lot of people can't hold certain assets to maturity. Why? Because they're insolvent themselves. They've got something else that they're going to be losing on the back end. All right, here we go. So talking about home price expectations, this suggests the Fed's tightening plans have failed miserably at slowing the growth in what is arguably the most important asset class for the U.S. middle class. The increase was most pronounced for respondents under the age of 60 and those with a high school education or less. How insane is that? Now, there's a great question. It's a super chat. Thank you, Control, for this. Check this out. So first off, let's address this, and then we're going to address the super chat. The increase was most pronounced for respondents under the age of 60 and those with a high school education or less. So less educated, right? And that's what I want to do is educate people on this. This is the super chat. What happens when the dollar collapses in hyperinflation? Won't houses sell for more? All right, that's great. All throughout the dawn of time when we have hyperinflation, you know what hyperinflates? Things that you cannot live without. Food and energy. Foreclosures explode. People stop paying rent and they have to get forced out, and it takes a long time to get them out. We never see homes hyperinflate unless this is what happens in the beginning. They start to rise exponentially because The printing presses go crazy and they start paying all the workers tons of money. And if you remember, let's give Weimar Republic from Germany as an example. What's happening is at the beginning, they would start giving pay wage increases. Then what they would do is the money was falling in value so much, they would start paying them instead of it biweekly, it'd be every week, then it was every day. Then at one point, when everything was just hitting fever pitch, it was like multiple times a day, right? Because by the time you get paid, you can't go and get the bread because the bread's going up too much in price. Houses do not follow that same trend. Real estate does not follow that same trend. And so people need to realize that. Let's use Venezuela as an example. Stock market takes off, right? Because what's happening is people are searching for yield. That's what's happening right now on a smaller scale in America, where people are starved for yield because the money in their savings account or their checking account is not keeping up with inflation. So they're pulling it out. They're putting it into bonds somehow. It's either most of the time it's going into money market funds because they pay what 3, 4, 5% right now. The money markets are going out and buying bonds to secure that increase, that interest rate, and you're seeing that right there. That's on a small scale. On a larger scale, people start running into the stock market. But it has been proven time and time again that even the stock market gains pale in comparison to the gains if you would have just bought some canned food because of how much the food and energy goes up. Okay. So that's what people need to understand. Now, with this being said, I do not believe that we are going to have neither a Weimar or a Venezuelan style hyperinflation in America. Why? Because we are still considered, even though it's falling apart right now, and I believe it's going to fall apart before the US dollar is completely taken out as a world reserve currency. We're still considered a world reserve currency. So there's still a lot of countries using our dollar, right, to supplement their own currency. So I believe that you're going to see the downturn in certain markets being the housing market prior to that happening. Okay. And the Fed is making sure a darn good job. They show you that they're going to crush this fast. That is the exponential curve. We're seeing this crazy straight up hockey stick action in the Fed funds rate. Okay. Do I believe they could have done it faster? Yes. Do I believe this is the fastest they've done it in the last century? Yes. So they are going to make sure that they crush this. All right. The question is how long. If they ran the Fed funds rate to 8% right now, as opposed to what we're sitting at, what 5.5, let's say, that crushing would happen a lot faster. But you'd blame them. So they're doing it fast enough to make this happen before hyperinflation really sets in all classes, but slow enough to where you don't understand that they're doing it. I hope that makes sense. Type 4 if that makes sense. Type 5 if it doesn't, so I can get an idea where you guys are at, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's turn next to the year ahead. Of commodity price expectations rose across the board in August, increasing by 0.4% for gas, 0.1% for food, and for the cost of medical care, 0.8%. Now, did you notice most Americans do not believe that energy and food is going to raise that much, but they did say that medical care they're seeing really high on their list, right? It's again about where the mentality is, the focus is of the consumer. And I'm telling you, the consumer is not prepared for what happens next. It says, but while the latest reversal in the downward trend of inflation is troubling, what's even more concerning was the reports finding that the median expected growth in household income fell 2.94%. This decline was largest for respondents with a high school education or less. This is the lowest since July of 2021. So here's the question. The respondents, the people, the consumer sentiment being asked, polled, said, okay, we believe that inflation's here to stay. Next year, 3 years, 5 years out, we're going to have inflation the entire time. They said they believe that homes are going to keep going up, right? All right, I do not agree with either of those statements. Then they said, okay, we believe that inflation with food and energy is going to be just a little bit, but with household income, we believe that's going to fall. We're talking points of a percentage, right? Tenths of a percent for their expectations of inflation over food and gas. But they're saying 2.94% of them believe that they're going to lose income over the next year or two. All right, that's not believing, that's them seeing. Type the number 6 if you are seeing your income fall, especially in real wages compared to inflation metrics. It's insane that we have a president that's coming out and touting how good of a job he is. That guy is as senile as it's just absolutely insane. And that's where we're at right now. People are getting that gut feeling. They got that gut feeling. Like my friend that said when I pretty much begged him to sell his house in May, do not wait until July. And now I waited and it's crickets. And he said he had that gut feeling. He's all, I knew when you were telling me you're right. And, it's like, hey, I mean, at the end, it doesn't affect me. I just want to see everybody prosper and thrive and crush it, right? Because that just helps the movement. Now it says here, um, prompting the report authors to write perceptions about current credit conditions and expectations about future contingent conditions both deteriorated. Digging into the details of the household finance survey, it reveals substantial deterioration across all indicators, and especially when it comes to applying or receiving new credit. And that's a part of this premiere that I'm doing. I put a link down in the description below with this auto broker. Very interesting revelations about the auto industry, because we see people default on car loans before we see them default on two other things. I know it sounds crazy. They default on auto loans quicker than they default on uh, house payments, and they default on auto loans before they default on credit cards. Same thing happened back in 2006, 2007. And the reason why is because credit card payments are super small, right? The minimum payment. Yeah, sure, you're seeing the balance add up. You can keep sort of pushing that off and pay that minimum payment. Houses is like, oh man, if I'm going to make this jump, it's a big jump. But cars seem to be the easiest thing. Why? Because people can go out and get a second car and then default on that one. And so default rates are shockingly high. Repo rates are very high. There's industry problems in the insurance he's going to tell you about. It's very important to understand this. So now we're looking at these points from the report. Median household spending growth expectations fell to 5.3%. That's down 0.1%. Perceptions of credit card access compared to a year ago deteriorated in August, with the share of households reporting it is harder to obtain credit than 1 year ago, hitting a new series high. Very important. If people do not believe they have access to credit, they're going to treat the credit they have differently and what they have totally differently. All right. The application rate for any kind of credit over the past 12 months declined 40.3% in February. This is the lowest reading since October of 2020. Application rates declined to 11.9% for auto loans and 12.5% for credit card limit requests, but increased to 24.8% for credit cards and 6.5% for mortgages and 5.3% for mortgage refinances. The overall rejection rate for credit applications increased to 21.8%. This is the highest level since June of 2018. And we talked about earlier today that auto loan rejections are hitting 14.3%. This is up from 9.1% in January, up 50%. We're talking 8 months later. Credit card loan rejections are skyrocketing. Auto loan rejections are skyrocketing. That means there's less people out there to buy cars and buy stuff in the stores to bid the prices up. You see, the Fed has been doing their job. I don't like what the Fed does. I want us to be on a gold standard and have no inflation or very little inflation. But that's not the world we live in. Type 11 if you're buying gold right now and silver. I want to see how many people are seeing this happening in real time. All right, so let's do this. The average perceived probability of missing a minimum debt payment over the next 3 years fell by 0.6% percentage point to 11.1%. You know why I think that is? I think the consumer believes that the government's going to bail them out. But this next time, I do not believe the government's going to bail them out. Finally, looking at the state of the labor market, we find this. Medium 1 year ahead of expected earnings growth rose by 0.1 percentage points. The series has been moving within a narrow range. Mean unemployment expectations, or mean probability the US unemployment rate will be higher 1 year from now, increased 1.8 percentage points to 38.5%. So there are more and more people right now believing their gut. Type 12, if you agree, unemployment is going to rise from here on out for the foreseeable future. We are going to see higher unemployment. That means less jobs and more people getting laid off or fired. And that is a big deal. Finally, in this, check this out. The mean perceived probability of finding a job decreased 0.1 percentage points to 55.7. That means 55.7 people polled believe that they are going to have less likelihood of finding a job in the future than they are now. So desperation is starting to fall in this country, and you are going to see it increase in the fall, not only because the facts are the facts, but because the actual changing of the weather, the longer nights, the shorter days, all of that will actually cause people to regress and get a little more slow, a little bit more depressed. And that's going to make this fall even faster. Look, fall's coming the fall. It's look at Lehman Brothers. We're following that cycle perfectly. So can't wait for the end of the month. Can't wait to see you at the Silver Symposium if you're coming. Uh, I'll make another announcement because G. Edward Griffin's coming to speak now. A lot of cool changes are happening for that. Guys, I put the premiere with that auto broker down below and I'll paste in the comment section. It comes on in a couple of hours, about 2.5 hours. And I think it's going to be really eye opening for you to see what's going on in the market. With that being said, the Economic Ninja